Hey, good morning. Middle of the week, and here we are. It was fast, right? Because Monday was off for a lot of us, and so man, it's a short weekend, and really obvious. I mean, a short week, and really a short week for me since I take Fridays off. So man, I'm down to the wire on mine. It's like Friday Eve or whatever. So hope everything's good in your world, man. We went to watch some basketball last night. Man, some days basketball just makes me want to go sit in the car till it's over. They get a little tense. It was good last night, the back and forth kind of a deal, and we won at the end. But it was man, it was a good game. Just taxing on you just to watch and fret and all of those things you do when you're watching your grandkids play ball. So it was good, and hope everything's good in your world. And so we'll see what the day develops. I'm planning on finishing up reading, or at least getting through some more of reading my book, Diapers to Norms. I'm doing an Audible book on it, or audio book. So I've been working through that, and we'll see how that goes. And so then today, I'm ready to look into some truth. We're flipping the page. We are in chapter 9 of the Gospel of John. And so another healing, another opportunity for discussion. Things are getting tense. I mean, it just the sides have been drawn. You are either Team Jesus or you're Team Pharisees in that sense, and we see what's taking place now. This John chapter 9. We're going to see how far we get through this. Is one of these healings that is full of great truth and an opportunity to learn some things. And so I want to take the time to do that. There were less than 10 healings, I think, in the Old Testament as you drift through there and just try to find them. There were 3 resurrections, right? But then there were several healings that took place, but not a lot in the scheme of things. In all of the Old Testament, there's just 10. If we look at Isaiah and we understand what he says in Isaiah 42, which is what we call a messianic passage, it deals with the Messiah and his coming. God says this about him. This is what the Lord God says, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and its offspring, who gives breath to the people on it, a spirit to those who walk in it. I am the Lord. I have called you in righteousness. I will also hold you by the hand and watch over you. I will appoint you as a covenant to the people, as a light to the nations, to open blind eyes, to bring out prisoners from the dungeon, and those who dwell in darkness from the prison. I am the Lord. That is my name. I will give my glory. I will not give my glory to another, nor praise my idols. And so praise to idols. And so here what we find there is he is going to give sight to the blind. That's the Messiah. God is entrusting that to him, and that will be a part of what he does. And God will receive the glory for that. You remember in Luke, the very first time Jesus spoke publicly in the temple or in the synagogue, was that he walked in, they handed him the scroll of Isaiah, he sat down and he opened it up to the place where this is written: the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to captives and the recovery of the sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed, and proclaim the favorable year of the Lord. He rolls that up and says, today this has been fulfilled in your hearing. So we know a part of the work of the Messiah will be that he will give sight to the blind. And so, in fact, in Matthew 21, Matthew records this one little phrase. It's important to understand. It says, and those who were blind and those who limped came to him in the temple area, and he healed them all. And so there was massive healings that were taking place. This was not an uncommon thing in Jesus. While Jesus was on the earth, you would see mass healings. It is exactly what the Messiah did. There should be no, if you were a casual student of the book of Isaiah, you would have to deduce that this man who is bringing about all of these healings must be that man that Isaiah spoke of, meaning the Messiah. But as we're going to see, hardened hearts don't see it that way. So Let's get to John 9, and let's just read, and then we'll see how far we can get. I'm going to read 1 through 12. As Jesus passed by, that would be the temple, based on the context of where we are. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he would be born blind? Jesus answered, it was neither that this man sinned nor his parents, but it was so that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must carry out the works of him who sent me as long as it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had said this, he spit on the ground, made mud from the saliva, and applied the mud to his eyes, and said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent. So he left and washed and came back seeing. So the neighbors and those previously saw him as a beggar and saying, is this not the one who used to sit and beg? Others were saying, this is he. Still others were saying, nah, this just looks like him. The man himself kept saying, no, I am the one. So they were saying to him, how then were your eyes opened? He answered, the man who is called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and said to me, go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and I received my sight. And they said to him, where is he? And he said, I don't know. Now, so that's the conversation, probably as far as we're going to get, maybe not even that far. But let's just look at what's going on. So here's this beggar, that they called him that. Obviously, it's where the place you would go if you're at the temple. You're assuming people are in a generous mood. They're wanting to make right with God. And so, as they see somebody, oh, this may help, right? And so they give. It's that place where beggars go. One, it's busy and everything else. So this man has been born blind. Jesus sees him, and he's born. Now, blindness was prevalent in those days, according to history. Apparently, sexual diseases, gonorrhea, and others can affect that. They can affect the blindness of the one who has the disease, and they can pass it on to their children. And so it was kind of I guess because of maybe immorality or whatever. But anyway, that's not the only reason. Sometimes it's just genetic defects, right? I mean, that's a part. Listen, we live in a sin-fallen world. Death and sickness and suffering is a part of that. And so it's important to understand that. And the disciples immediately asked the question, okay, so he's blind, so somebody sinned here, right? It's either his parents or him. Who did it? They always associated that with that, right? So that's their question. Now, lots of theology is built around this idea of sin and suffering and it going together. And the pagans believed that sickness and suffering and calamity of all sorts came because you angered the gods, right? The Jews took Exodus chapter 20 and perverted that. And you may have fallen prey to this as well. And so I want to take just a minute and look at this. This is in the giving of the law, the Ten Commandments in Exodus. Let me get to it. In Exodus chapter 20. And it says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make yourself an idol or any likeness of what is in heaven or earth or beneath or the water under the earth. You shall not worship them nor serve them. For I, the Lord, your God, am a jealous God, inflicting the punishment of the fathers on the children, on the third and fourth generation to those who hate me, but showing favor to thousands to those who love me and keep my commands. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Now, in that little passage, he says he will visit and inflict punishment of the fathers onto the children to the third and fourth generation. And so you hear people use these terms, generational curses. So that means they have sat under people who have taken this passage and done the same thing that the Jews did with it. And they make it personal. They make it like your father and his sin will affect you personally and your sin. And that is not what this text is talking about. Sin in one generation will have devastating effects, right? We know that. We know that as we as a nation here personally move away from holding on to the truths of Scripture, from when our government and the generation of those who have come have decided to do away with all of those things, we reap the effects of that, right? And so there is a way in which that thing does affect that. We see it clearly in Judges chapter 2, verse 10, one of the most somber passages in all the scriptures. And there arose then after them another generation who did not know the Lord nor his ways. Now, that lets us know that that generation abandoned God, and the effect of it affected the next generation. And so he's saying, listen, it's a generational thing, man. It's not a generational curse. That there's no such thing as a generational curse. That passage is about not an individual, like your dad did something and now you reap the difficulty of that. And so there's this whole theology built around, so then we must pray that away, and you must, confess the sins of your parents and all of that. Now, while it is true that we do suffer from what our parents do, that's not the same thing that said there, right? Your parents choose not to work and they live in poverty. You reap the suffering of what that looks like, right? Your parents molest you or do those kind of things to you, emotional, everything. You reap the suffering of that. Parents divorce, you reap the suffering of that. Addictions and other things, you reap the suffering of those things too. That is not somehow some generational curse has been passed along to you. Just because your father was an alcoholic doesn't mean that you're going to be an alcoholic. Understand that? You don't have to break anything for that. You just have to make a choice. And so it's important that we see that. Now, Ezekiel gives us great clarity on this. And I hope you don't mind these rabbit trails, but they're important because this stuff, it's real life. I mean, a lot of people live with a lot of this junk, and we want to be the victim, and we want to play the part that, well, man, this is because of something my parents did, right? And there's a lot of psychology built around that, and a lot of people making a lot of money by counseling you day in and day out about these things and helping you overcome those things because it puts money in their pocket, or they're ignorant, one or the other. But Ezekiel 18, listen to what he says. This is God speaking to Ezekiel, and he says this. Then the word of the Lord came to me, saying, what do you people mean by using this proverb about the land of Israel, saying the fathers eat sour grapes, but it is the children's teeth that have become blunt? Now, I mean, basically, that whole thing is giving the context of our parents do this thing and we suffer from it, right? That was kind of a spin-off of the Exodus 20 misapplication, where generational curses. And so he says, what do you mean using this proverb about the land of Israel, saying the fathers eat sour grapes, but it is the children's teeth that have become blunt? That somehow your father's sin has created devastation in the lives of their children. Listen to what he says. As I live, verse 3 declares the Lord God, you certainly are not going to use this proverb in Israel anymore. You're going to stop this foolishness. That's bad theology. It ends today. Behold, all souls are mine. The souls of the Father, as well as the soul of the sons of mine. The soul who sins will die. But if a man is righteous and practices justice and righteousness, if he does not eat of the mountain shrines, or raise his eye to the idols of the house of Israel, or defile his neighbor or his wife, and if a man does not oppress them, but restores the debtor his pledge, does not commit robbery, but he gives his bread to the hungry, he goes on and on about this whole concept. If this is what happens. Now he gets down to verse 20 and he says this, the person who sins will die. A son will not suffer the punishment for his father's guilt, nor will a father suffer the punishment for the son's guilt. The righteousness of the righteous will be upon himself, and the wickedness of the wicked will be upon himself. Now, what is that saying? There's no such thing as this generational curse. The righteous reap the rewards of righteousness. The wicked, and each man is responsible for his own sin. I'm not responsible for my dad's sins. I hope that clears that up. Now, so that was his answer when they asked him the question, who sinned, right? This man or his parents, or this man? That was really at the core of what they were asking. Well, did his mom have some venereal disease, or did they have a curse on him, and so naturally he's inherited that? That's just a silly way of seeing life. So we just saw, and Jesus is going to answer much more succinctly than I am, but I wanted to give you the background of what their thought process was. And God had already answered that. No, a man will not die for his parents' sin in that sense. Now, so then is it personal, right? Well, we know that some sin can be the result of, some sickness can be the result of our personal sin, right? We know that worry and stress and all those things can affect our heart, right? Our ulcers. We know that addictions can mess with our liver and kidneys and other substances. We know that, right? In fact, 1 Corinthians 11, Paul says, some of you are sick and some of you are dead because you have eaten the bread, taken Holy Communion with sin in your life and not repented of it, right? In that sense. And so we know that there is that correlation. But Jesus says it was neither. The man was born this way. You're not born. He wasn't old enough to sin in that sense. No, he was born in sin in that sense, but not where he had acted it out. And so Jesus says it was neither, man. Now let's get back to what the text says. Wrong passage. So then he says it was neither this man nor the other, but it was so that the works of God might be displayed on him. This is a powerful passage here. He's saying, listen, sometimes it's simply to glorify God, like this is going to do, because I'm going to heal this man right here, right now. I'm going to heal him. Sometimes suffering is that people may see your weakness and see the strength in the midst of that weakness, right? That's what he told Paul. Paul says, hey man, can you get rid of this thorn in the flesh thing? This thing is driving me nuts, right? And God says, I'm not going to do it. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is perfected in weakness. And so sometimes people suffer for that weakness. Helen Keller would never have done the works that she had done had she not been born in the terrible condition that she was in. And there are so many that are that way. George Washington Carver never would have studied to the degree he did if he didn't have a weakness in his body that kept him from playing with the other kids, and so he had no other choice to do but to read, right? Harper Kate, in all her whole life, her short life, has affected more people in this world than I have in my 60-some-odd years of this life, right? There is something about that. And so listen, let's don't look at those with infirmity and sickness and go, well, man, hey, there's, must be sin. No. Look at it from a different angle and see the glory of God in that. This is what Jesus is referring to when he says this. It was neither this man nor his parents, but it was so that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must carry out the works of him who sent me as long as it is day. Now listen to what Jesus is saying. We're on a mission, boys. We got to work the works. He says we. And I think that's going to include you and me. We must work the works of God, right? Time is short. That's what Ephesians 5:16 says, right? Time is short. Redeem the time, for the days are evil, right? So let's don't sleep. Let's don't slumber. Let's be about the work. And Jesus is like, hey, I'm on a mission, man. I am right now while I'm here. I'm the light of the world. He's saying, look, I'm it. If I don't do this, how will they see God? It's such a dark place here. So light has come into the world. But does he not also call you and me light as well, right? You are the light of the world. Don't hide it, right? So here's what he does. Verse 6. When he said this, he spit on the ground and made mud from the saliva, and applied the mud to his eyes, and said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent. So he left and washed and came back seeing. So the neighbors and those who previously saw him as beggars were saying, is this not the one who used to sit and beg? Now, we won't get to that part, but I do want to talk about the mud and saliva, because people are like, well, why did he do that? Why didn't he just heal him? What was this whole mud and saliva thing about? Was it some kind of medicinal stuff in there? I don't know. I do know. We don't know why he did it. The obvious reason, I think, that makes the most sense is it's a step of faith. He could have healed the man, but he wanted the man to have an opportunity to demonstrate faith by stumbling over to the pool, right? It was near there. Hezekiah had it built from the river, the river Gihon. or the spring rather, was outside the city. Jerusalem has no rivers, and so they built an aqueduct to create this pool of Siloam so that they would have it if the Assyrians came to attack. Hezekiah wanted to make sure his people had water, so that was the whole point of why that was there. And so he sent him there because that's an act of faith. I mean, this guy's got this mud dripping from his eyes, and he's going to walk into, the city walls, and he are out, and are over there, and he's going to wash in that, and so that's what happens. And now we're going to see tomorrow the reaction of others, and that will take us through the text. And so, man, Lord bless you guys. Hope that's been helpful for you. Love you. Can't wait to talk with you more in the morning. Have a great one.